here I wanted to walk through a elevation certificate and what goes into it and my interpretation of some of the data in here. There's a couple of, or there's an introductory page here, gives sort of some of the definitions and things that we'll need to know about. We'll talk about those as we go through. Then we get right into the elevation source. I'm going to zoom in so we can see what's going on. Owner's name, address, and everything, tax. This is all going to come straight from the owner themselves or the person that's hiring you. So, the name, the city, or the address, and then really a tax number oftentimes is really okay here. Um, I've used that quite a bit. Building use, it tells you right away, residential, non-residential, whatever it might be. The Latin long, that I often grab from a number of sources. Really, I mean, if we use this example one here that I was looking at for the BFE, we can come in here and we can grab a Latin along, I believe, even off the GIS. So if we go to measuring tools, I think we can get, yep. So we can get a Latin along right from here, or you can go to Google Earth, whatever, name a source, and you can grab that information pretty readily. So that one's not hard to grab. Two photos, generally front and back, but I usually will include four. I'll go all four sides, and even a fifth one if it's really necessary. Building diagram number, there's a lot of options here. So this comes from, they want to know what type of diagram, and these are some standard diagrams here. This is towards the end of the instructions. And you really just have to pick out your best guess on which one this is. So here you have the finished grade, and then things up on stilts, I believe, slab on grade. Sorry, this one's slab on grade. We have ones that are on stilts in here. Maybe there's an enclosure on the bottom or a split level in here. So this is from when you get into the building or get into the residence or the structure, whatever it might be, and you can then find what type this is. You'll know this pretty quick, and you can also go to the images that for the pictures to help with that too. There we go. So that's the diagram number. That's just the best one that most represents the structure itself. Building with a crawl space or an enclosure or a basement oftentimes. So this is going to be the square footage. Most of the time when I'm doing a flood cert, I will have located the building anywhere, or I will have taped the outside of the building, and I'll use that for the square footage. Permanent flood openings. These are openings in the foundation that allow for the passage of water freely. In that case, then the something like a window actually doesn't count for this. So here's a requirement for the flood openings. Here's another PDF that I found, and if we scroll through here, and there's a couple of diagrams. You can see, like here, where water is not flowing freely between the two, we have unequal flood forces. There is no flood opening in this case, whereas there is here. So the water is able to flow freely. Looking through a couple of these other pictures, and the resolution's not great here, but you can kind of see that these are pre-engineered. These are engineered openings that allow for water to go through the building, and even here in the garage. Okay, so the square footage of the crawl space comes from the strap in the building. Number of openings, are they the net total of all of these? Are they engineered, yes or no? And actually this document helps to define what an engineered flood opening might be. For buildings with an attached garage, of course, then you have to find the square footage of the garage in there, and if there's flood openings in that. For the flood insurance rate map, the firm map. So this comes from the Map Service Center, okay? When you go into, this is the one that we were looking at, the BFE. If you go into the MSC, then you'll get the map number actually right here. So in this case, it's 17019 is the map number. C is the suffix. The panel number is 266. And just to kind of reiterate that, I grabbed the total firm from the from the MSC. So I downloaded this here where I go and I can get the effective panels, get all of the panels for this area. And here, if we zoom in, panel 266, that matches up. Now, one thing I did notice here was that the panel number doesn't match. Um, I'm not sure which one to do. I maybe list both of them in this case. So if we're going back to the flood cert, I may put the community number, community name and the community number and list both of these in here. County name and state, that's an easy one. The map or the panel number, well in this case this is number panel 266. Okay. That is a C. The index date, again we can grab off of the firm itself, October 2nd, but it's also going to be listed on the firmet, and that matches, okay, 2013 of October 2nd. The flood zone, what flood zone is that in? Well, in this case, I'm going to look at the ferment. This appears to be in zone AE. It also appears to be in zone X. So depending on where the property is, it might be, these are the most common ones that we will see here in Illinois. Sometimes you'll see zone A. Well, anything with zone A does not have a base flood elevation. Outside of Illinois, you have a whole lot of other options here, AO, AH, V, and AR. So whichever zone it fits, that's where we have to put this in here too. And the base flood elevation, you can get that from, not necessarily from the fermet, but from the flood insurance study. The rest of this information, where did you get that BFE, the base flood information? So from the flood insurance study or from the map itself, something else. What datums did you use? If it's in a coastal barrier source, what is that designation date? All right. Number 2, or page 2 here, heading, just the building information. Then we get to the elevation information. So what are your building elevations based on? Whether construction drawings, in most cases, it's been finished construction where the house is constructed and the homeowner is looking for the for flood insurance to maybe decrease their insurance rate, whatever it might be. Then we get into the elevations. So what benchmark did you use? Well, most of the time we'll use GPS, but you always need to check into a benchmark locally to make sure that it is the GPS is given the correct elevations. Different datums, which one we're using here, so you take a simple checkbox to figure that out. Then we get into the stuff where we actually have to measure the buildings. So the top of the bottom floor. Well, the top of the bottom floor, if we go back to the images, we go back to the structures. If we have one, let's use this one here, on slab. Top of the bottom floor is this elevation, whatever that might be here. So you'd establish that by establishing a local benchmark and maybe using an a level rod or an instrument to get that elevation there. All right, something with a basement, well, that you gotta have to go into the basement or the crawl space and identify how far it is. Most of the time what I've done is I identify the top of the foundation elevation from exterior and then go inside and measure down to the floor for the top of the bottom floor. All right, back up to elevations. Top of the next higher floor. So if there's a basement, what's the finished floor of the first floor, basically? Bottom's the lowest horizontal structures for V zones only. In Illinois, we're generally not concerned with that. Certainly in the Midwest, I'm not sure actually what the V zones are. I don't have experience with that. If there's an attached garage, what's the top of the slab? So the finished floor of the top of the garage. If there are machinery, so this is going to be a water heater or a furnace, maybe in the building somewhere. What's the elevation of that? Most of the time I'll take a measurement up. If it's on blocks or something in the basement, it's up maybe a tenth or two, so we can get the elevation there. And then we have the lowest adjacent and the highest adjacent grades here. If we look at the example from Muhammad, what you're going to have to do is get in here and get elevations at each corner of the building, or most of the corners. So front, the rear here, and get all of the elevations. That's the adjacent grade. And what that's going to tell us then is which one of those is the lowest and the highest. And if there's a stairs or deck or something, also get it at the stairs. And just simply put in the elevations as we go through here. Lastly is the people that are the person that is certifying to this, who you are, and just really the contact information. Comments are going to be what type of machinery. All this might, this is going to be the general comments, or anything else that needs to be added in here. For building elevation where there's no survey required, or for where there's no BFE, well, you'd get all this information here as well. And it's roughly the same, top of the bottom floor, and where it came from. So attached garage, top of slab, everything else. You get the property owner information here, so many times we'll have to fill this out and then send it over to the owner and have them sign it and send it in. As a surveyor, we were a representative of the owner in that we make the measurements, and then they are the ones that actually need to send it in to get the flood insurance map. So we certify that it's correct here by doing all of this stuff. The owner or the representative of them is sending it in to FEMA for, or their insurance company for their consideration. As you go forward, photographs, and actually this is very interactive. You can actually just click on it and it'll allow you to insert the photo itself. And then you put the caption. Is it the front, is it the side, or anything else that might be necessary in here. You can allow up to 4 photos to be attached to this document. It says that if there's more, go ahead and use additional sheets. And then here's all of the other definitions and things that go along with this flood cert. So that's the information that usually goes along or goes into the flood certification, and maybe ways to get some of it too.